Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us for Tiger TV. I'm here today with Brian Jones, going to talk about BAR program at the high school. Something new taking place this year. It's not COVID related, so kind of nice to talk about something that's not related to the pandemic. Start, Brian. Just tell us a little bit about what this program is. What is BAR?
Well, first I'll say BAR is B-A-R-R and not B-A-R.
Good to clarify.
Yeah, and it stands for Building Assets, Reducing Risks.
Okay.
And that's the acronym. And what it is BAR is a strengths-based, research-proven practice that really focuses and provides schools with tools to focus on the whole child. And so not just focusing on the academics, but also focusing on the social, emotional, and those other non-academic needs that get in the way of students really being able to be successful sometimes.
Sure.
And so it's kind of a systems type of approach that we are bringing into to the high school.
High school. So not something that we're creating in Marshall ourselves. It's something that's bigger than us.
It is, yeah. Actually, it's a program that started in Minnesota, up in St. Louis Park, Minnesota, at St. Louis Park High School in 1999. And since that time, it's spread around the country. It's in 170 schools, 16 states currently, and we are part of, and we'll talk about this here in a little bit, but we're part of a grant that has brought that program to us.
Okay, great. So just as we kind of get started talking about this a little bit today, would you just give us an overview? How does BAR help students be successful in high school?
Sure. It helps students be successful by working with our staff to help them better understand those students' strengths, build on that student's strengths, and then proactively address those non-academic needs that we see that get in the way of students' academic growth and development.
Sure, so making that personal connection we hear you talk about a lot.
Very much so. It's heavily focused on building relationships. And again, the idea is, and sort of their tagline is, same students, same teachers, better results. And so it really, the idea is it builds on creating a stronger teacher-to-student relationship, student-to-student relationship, so they better understand their cohort of classmates they're with, and then better student-to-teacher relationships. And we understand that teacher-to-student and student-to-teacher relationship is a two-way street. Mm-hmm. And the older you get, the more, really probably the more important that becomes in those higher grades.
Right, try and keep kids connected and engaged in school.
Absolutely.
This year probably as much as any year when we're looking at so many different learning models taking place.
Very much so.
It's great. So when we're talking about BAR at the high school, are we talking, is this the whole high school? Is this some smaller group of kids, or who are we working with?
Yeah, so the BAR program was initially designed to work with ninth grade students. And since that time, it's expanded, and there's schools that are using it all the way into their elementary, middle and elementary grades. Mm-hmm. At the high school right now, we brought it in and focused with it just on our ninth grade students. And the idea is we're starting small because we want to make sure that we can sustain it and do it well. And so we're working with a smaller cohort of our ninth grade students, about 25 to 30% of those ninth grade students in a specific cohort and a specific group of teachers this year. And we want to see what those results are looking like, how it's going, sort of work through the bugs, and then make some decisions down the road if we're going to expand it to more grades.
Yeah. So not all the teachers, not all the ninth graders kind of build capacity to start with, so we can do it well rather than do it well. Fast.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, that makes sense. How would they implement some of this in the classroom? Is there a special time of the day, or is this across all the classrooms? Or?
Sure. So we work on it with our cohort of students. We've got a group of ninth graders. We're a block schedule, and what a block schedule for people who maybe don't understand what that means. Most people experienced high school, they had 7 or 8 classes a day. Well, since 1999, Marshall High School has been on a 4x4 block schedule. 4x4 meaning students attend 4 blocks a day for the 4 quarters throughout the year. Mm-hmm. But several years ago, we took a group of students who felt like that intensive model just didn't work well for their learning style, and so they have classes in that more traditional way that lasts throughout the entire year. And so our ninth grade students, we call it our ninth grade year-long classes. And that is a program where they have the same teachers in ninth grade English, ninth grade social studies, and ninth grade science, and they have them in the afternoon. And so that group of students rotates amongst those 3 teachers, but they have them all year. And so that's where we started with the idea. We had some foundational pieces that were already in place that we felt like would work well. And those teachers, quite honestly, were looking for some new tools to try to help reach those students. Sometimes that's some more of our at-risk population. And kids' needs have changed over the years, and we've known that. And so those teachers a year ago came to me and we talked and just said, we need some new strategies to try to help our kids be more successful. And so we looked at a few programs, and BAR was one of those programs. And sometimes you're fortunate enough in life where things just seem to align. And about the same time, we were approached by folks at BAR. They had just received a large grant from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and they are working with a network for school improvement. And they were looking for schools that had some demographic diversity and that weren't always located in a large metropolitan area. And so they approached us. They approached a few other schools, which we often compare ourselves to because we're similar, and asked if we would be interested. And so the idea of this grant focused on creating cohorts of schools throughout Minnesota, Illinois, and then in California to work together with the idea that if by working together we could implement change and see improvements faster than working alone.
And connections with other schools.
And
to
make
have some
connections,
support.
yeah. So we work with those schools and have the opportunities to collaborate with them digitally now and periodically to see how they're doing things and they see how we're doing things. And so we've learned a lot and we continue to learn a lot with how best to work this new system.
Good. So you mentioned the year-long classes there. So that's something that's been in place for a number of years at the high school. Is this replacing those year-long classes,
Yeah.
or is it an addition to that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So our year-long classes, or that concept, has been in place. We started that back in the 2007-2008 school year. So back when you were at the high
Assistant
school.
principal at that time, yeah.
And we've kept it. We've modified it. When we initially started, we had math and science and English as part of it, and we've removed math and we've brought in social studies. And over the years, we've had it developed more in terms of a literacy focus and a focus on developing those reading skills.
Sure.
And so this BAR has not replaced that. It's simply been a supplement to that. Most kids probably, if you ask them what BAR is, they're going to tell you they have no idea because they don't know. I mean, it's something that we're doing behind the scenes. And in terms of what we're doing is in terms of our communication and being intentional, and the teachers are being very intentional and trying to do some things to get to know those students better on a more personal level, and it's strengths-based. So get to know those students' strengths, build off their strengths, as opposed to merely just focusing on the academics. That high school, sometimes we get that tunnel vision, and that's what we focus on, of I'm teaching this subject, and it happens in a vacuum. We know if kids are dealing with other things, then that learning of that subject doesn't necessarily take place. So we're really trying to, again, focus on the whole child, help support those non-academic needs, so that that academic potential can be better realized.
Sure, because the goal is still to get to the diploma and meet all those credit requirements that exist, but sometimes we have to focus on these other things to make that happen.
Absolutely, and I would say the goal goes beyond just graduation. And one of the goals of this grant that has brought BAR to us is improving graduation rates, but it's also improving post-secondary education opportunities,
Right.
And specifically for students of color and those students who have historically been underserved. And so we're trying. It aligned very well with our district strategic plan, and I just felt like, and our team felt like, when we kind of went through the process to vet it out and see if this was something that made sense for us, felt like there was really some strong alignment there.
Great. So if I come into one of the classrooms where you're using this program and some of these extra supports, what kinds of things might I see happening in those classrooms that even if the kids aren't noticing, what might an administrator, another teacher, or parents notice is different?
Yeah, I think the only thing people are going to see differently is once a week we utilize a program called iTime. And iTime is simply a curriculum designed to foster and improve the climate for learning. And so it's a lesson that students are going to go through with their other students and the teacher, where they're going to focus on social emotional learning. They're going to focus on goal setting. They're going to focus on, this week it was who's your champion, and identify that person in your life who's a champion for you and who's your advocate. And those teachers, as they teach those lessons, they have the opportunity to share their story. And so it really, almost in a way, humanizes the classroom. Sometimes the lessons are dealing with loss and grieving. It's dealing with addiction, but really just practicing, giving students a chance to practice those essential life skills that they're going to need to have. And so as that happens, trust is built within the classroom. And if we know, research has proven, if you trust that teacher, you're more likely to follow their lead and do what they ask. And we've seen that in education forever, but it's just being more intentional than it's ever been before. So that's really the only thing that our students are going to see, or our teachers are going to do with their students. The rest of it really happens behind the scenes, and that's in terms of some changes we've made within the building and the way we communicate with one another and those types of things. And we can talk about that here in a little bit. But really, BAR focuses on these 8 components. They call them 8 interlocking strategies, and it's kind of in their emblem is how it's there. But iTime is one of those strategies.
Not like an iPhone.
Not an iPhone has, I guess it does have some to do with technology, because these iTime lessons are being delivered over virtual meetings now as we're in distance learning. But that's how it's happening for other students all around the country right now. And so some of the other strategies I've talked about focusing on the whole student. The second one is big strategy is professional development, and we've received a lot of professional development that's ongoing. So as a coordinator, I've got opportunities to meet twice a month with the other coordinators around the nation, and we're put into small groups and rooms, and we talk about what's happening there. We have opportunities to meet we have weekly coaching sessions with a person who's with BAR, and we're fortunate. Our BAR coach is a retired teacher from St. Louis Park, and he worked in the BAR system at St. Louis Park for over 20 years. So he's got a lot of insight and been extremely helpful. And then as the building principal, I also have the opportunity to meet with other principals from around the country and on a monthly basis. And so there's a lot of professional development there. Our teachers were trained in February before COVID, seems like a lifetime ago, but again in June, and we're going to get some additional training this coming summer as well. So professional development, I talked about iTime. Again, they're in cohorts of students, so it really builds this sense of togetherness, and hopefully helps reduce any students' feeling of isolation. They get to know each other, and as our kids get to know each other, and that's one of the advantages to being year-long, because it really starts to be almost a sort of a family atmosphere. And you think back to your early elementary school years when you were with your classmates the whole year, and you developed this bond, and it kind of brings us back to that.
Almost sounds like a lot of networking between administrators, teachers, and then even within the students. So you have to model that practice as you go down.
Absolutely, and so we hold weekly meetings, and where those teachers meet with myself as the BAR coordinator, but also as an administrator and our assistant principal, and then one of our counselors. Then twice a month for those students who we feel like are most in need and really struggling the most. And we have another team that meets, and that's all of our counselors, our school nurses, administration, our school resource officer. We bring in folks from in the community, agencies, to try to help provide that immediate support. So I think of that group, it's called Risk Review, and that group really is almost like a crisis team when a student is really struggling how do we help get them on track? And rarely are we ever talking about academic needs, because the teachers are able to address those, but we're talking about those other factors that interfere and get in the way. And then another strategy is just engaging families. And that's something we need to do a better job with. It's been a challenge during distance learning, but I've seen increased communication on the part of the teachers to those families, and so it really becomes the school, the families, and the students all working together in kind of a three-way triad of communication.
Best way to connect to those kids. So I know you're a data man, Brian. I know you're very data driven.
Yep.
What type of data do you collect, and how do you know that this is working with kids?
Yeah. I've done this job long enough to know that there's a lot of products that claim to have good results, and so the data is one of the things that I look at, but also is anything we bring in, is it grounded in research? And so has it been proven to be, is it research-based and research studies? And BAR has that. And so we've got the educational research studies that support it, but we also have seen some results, and not just in Marshall, because we're in the infant stages of this, but according to the Minnesota Department of Education, overall graduation rates, when they look at schools who have implemented BAR, their graduation rates have outperformed the state average. And these are large schools, these are small schools, and BAR has allowed schools the opportunity to go and look at that and sort of see for themselves. And so BAR sort of has the claim that they've seen improvements, so that schools who have implemented BAR the way BAR is supposed to be implemented have seen over the course of time graduation rates improve and students being more successful.
And across like all demographics.
All demographics, that whether this be, some of the schools we're with Compton, California.
Right.
And so we're with a school in Illinois which has over 4,000 students and over 1,200 students just at that high school. Wow. And then we're with schools that might have 150 students. And so we've looked specifically at our kids and our results. Now, it's a little different this year, and we realize that, and we're not seeing the same type of student success in all four of our grades. So if we don't even think about BAR, we're seeing where this year is more of a challenge for all of our students. And we know that. But what we've looked at is we looked at the 18-19 school year and the 19-20 school year. And we at the high school ask our teachers to post their grades every 3 weeks of a semester, of an 18-week semester. So we've looked at weeks 3, 6, 9, and 12 for those two previous years, and we just took an average. And we looked at the courses failed by our ninth graders and the percentage of students who were failing those courses. And we compared that to this year so far. So we just, again, looked at weeks 3, 6, 9, and 12. And what we've seen in our courses failed is we've seen a 15.5% reduction in the number of courses failed by those students in the year-long program as compared to those students who were in the year-long program over the past 2 years. And so trying as much as we can to look at make an apples to apples comparison, but what we've seen are the students in the year-long courses are responsible for a smaller percentage of those failing courses than they've been the past 2 years by 15.5%. And I think that's
significant, especially when we look at the year we're having this year.
It is, yeah. And so when we look at our percentage of students failing in those year-long classes, what we're seeing is that a similar reduction of students who are responsible for those failing courses, and we're seeing a double-digit decrease in the students in those year-long classes failing as compared to the previous 2 years. So I think we're seeing, it's early, but I feel like the data that we're seeing is encouraging, and I think we're moving in the right direction. And the data that our teachers have seen, I think they are energized and motivated by what they're seeing. And it's more work for them. There's no doubt about that, and they tell me that often. But And the part that's more work is what they're doing behind the scenes. And so our teachers are every week, they're responsible for a group of 20 students. And they're looking at all of their grades in all of their classes. And they document it on a spreadsheet, and then they come and they meet together early in the week, those 3 teachers, and they talk about all of their students' concerns that they have, or who's struggling, how can they help. And those students who they identify with a high enough concern come to us, and we call that the block meeting. And that's the teachers, administration, a counselor, and we talk and we try to provide some building level interventions. And then those students who have needs that are even greater than that, that comes to risk review. So there's just the amount of communication, and those teachers in the year long, they're reaching out to that child's other teachers saying, hey, so-and-so is in art. I see they're not passing that to the art teacher. What do they need to do? What's going on? Mm-hmm. And whether that be art or health or PE or whoever. So those teachers now are sort of functioning as, I'll call it mother hen for that group of 20 students. And so we've just seen an increased focus, and again, those teachers just aren't looking at social studies or science or language arts, but sort of really capturing the big picture for everything that's happening for that child.
Sure, whole extra layer of
It's a whole
kids.
nother layer, but we're excited about it because we believe it's working.
Right. Yeah, and we're not even halfway through the first year. It's
Yeah,
hard to tell, but it's exciting to see some
in
good
a
data
very
there.
unusual year. It's one of our bright spots.
Right. So thinking about an unusual year, COVID has certainly impacted kind of everything we do right now.
Yeah.
Are there things that we would have been doing with this that we can't do because of COVID, or how is that impacting your implementation year with this?
You know, really, of the 8 components of BAR, probably the biggest component that's been affected is the ability to engage families, bring them in for a family night, a parent night, and trying to better help them understand what we're doing. Our teachers, they've adapted well. They're making those adjustments. They're figuring it out as they go. The I-times have lessons. We've modified those to work in a virtual environment. We're not able to do a lot of the hands-on type of activities that we normally would have done, but we've been able to figure it out and adapt and be flexible. And so for the most part, I would say BAR implementation of the BAR program has not been affected in a very large way, just in a few minor things, but we've been able to have some workarounds.
And a year when we probably need more of those supports that this provides than we've ever needed before.
It gives us more tools in the toolbox, so to speak, to try to help reach those students who may be struggling.
Right. That's great. Sounds like good to have that in there this year. So then thinking about future steps, so what do you see as next steps? Will this eventually evolve to more kids or all the kids, or what do you see as future plans?
The BAR program was designed to work with all 9th grade students and then perhaps eventually make its way into 10th grade, and that's down the road. We're part of a 5-year grant study, and so we're trying to make those determinations right now. If we were to expand this, what are going to be some of the challenges or roadblocks that we're going to need to navigate and work through? So we're in the process of doing that. A little bit of it's financial, and so we've got to make a decision on, right now I serve as the coordinator, which I'm able to do with 50 students, but we've got 240 freshmen right now, and to take that up to scale, it's not something I don't think I can continue to devote even more time to with the other responsibilities. So part of it's a staffing issue, but part of it too is our curricular design, and there would be some impacts with, like, for instance, our EL students who are in some year-long programs and our special education students who are in some year-long classes and those types of things. So we want to keep the big picture in mind and make sure this is the right thing. But from what I've seen so far, I do believe all students could utilize this type of support and have this type of advocacy from that teacher within their building. But I'm also worried about and have to be aware about another demand on our staff and something new and sort of initiative fatigue. So right now we're trying to sort all those things out and make some decisions.
Sure. And absolutely the idea of starting with a smaller group and kind of slowly phasing it in and making sure it's working before we expand and add positions and some of those kind of things.
Absolutely.
Nice way to
Let's
make
learn,
that happen.
learn how to walk before we can run,
Right.
so to speak.
Right. So anything, Brian, I didn't ask you about this program that you think our community should know about?
I think in some ways it brings us back to where really the foundation of education, that relationships are key and they're critical. Relationships take time to establish and develop, and just like in any relationship, there's going to be ups and downs, and in figuring out how each student is unique and understanding their strengths and how do we work to their strengths. So I think that's helped those of us who are currently involved in BAR sort of refocus our beliefs in that and our efforts in making sure that that's really a strong foundation. And if that's not in place, academic success is going to elude some of our students.
Right. Well, it sounds like a great program and excited to see more as that comes. So kudos to you and your team for getting that implemented. And with everything going on and everything on everyone's plate, I know it's a lot extra this year, but thank you for your work with that this year.
Yep.
Good. And that, I think, concludes our program today. So thank you, everyone, for joining us and listening in today.